good Monday night. November, guys, is almost over. I trust everybody had a pleasant and a blessed Thanksgiving. I did. I was fortunate enough to eat at one of my daughter's homes. My husband cooked, and I came home and just had a little bit. Didn't, if I can use this word, didn't pig out, but I am so grateful to be here tonight and excited because Michigan State University, whoo, they pulled it off, guys. Alabama pulled it off. University of Michigan pulled it off. Why am I saying that? Because we're ending the month of November on a good note, guys. Yay! Granny's Hands is here. Granny's Hands is here, and she would just love to tell all of you thus far, you've changed my life. Seriously, allowed me to come in and read. And what we're going to do this time is go through the whole chapter. It's a long chapter, and I'm going to try not to stop so much. But before we get started, most of you know from last readings, I have a knee baby. And this chapter deals with the waiting room, all eyes on me. And I know some of you grannies have been in the waiting room. So with that said, it's my goal to get straight through, try not to look down as much. And as we know that this is the 29th Monday night, um, I'm excited. Okay, here we go. It's called, this is chapter 5. Those of you that have the book, I'm on page 23. And again, I'm going to try my best to stay focused so I'm not looking down so much. I wore my pearls for this one, and I wore my pretty blue scarf because this is as close to heaven as you get when you're in the waiting room. Here we go. God created us with the ability to use our five senses. We have the capacity to smell, touch, hear, see, and taste. There are some smells that I shall never forget. The smell in the hospitals is one that I have an acute awareness of. When my daughter was hospitalized out of state, I became attentive to long corridors, the patterns and shapes of the walls, the different colors, uniforms the staff wore, and the floors where patients in critical conditions were kept. I learned some of the codes that were sounded over the intercom. I knew the different families were being summoned to the next room to meet the doctors in those miniature rooms located in quiet places, Granny, so they could exchange words regarding their loved ones. Now, on this particular day, I faced the raw realities of life and some of those smells that once held me captive. I lifted my old hands to invoke the mercies of God. So I'm turning the page. We're on page 23. Now we're going to page 24. To sustain me in everything. God would prove to me that I was created in his image. Therefore, I could call on him and he would answer. It was time for me to do my part also. The real I in Christ needed to show up. No mask, hear me, grannies. No mask, no pretending. Just show up and take care of the business at hand. Once again, lift, life had dealt my family a blow that would change the structure of our entire lives. Granny, I'm going to stop just for a minute. Things happen within the family sometimes that you don't have anything to do with, and it changes your whole life. And this is what happened to me and my family. Uh, I didn't ask for it, but because I was a player, and when I say player, my child was in trouble. And I have other kids and I have grandkids. You heard about the grandkids, but I had to become an active player in the waiting room because all eyes, Granny, were on me. When you get a call from the hospital letting you know that your child is in trouble, what happens then? Picture the sheer panic and what ifs that are flowing so freely through your inside, and at any moment you can break. Yet you don't, because you know everyone is looking at you, holding it together. And with all those external and internal struggles you have going on, why do they put you in this small 5 by 5 room where you and everybody else watching know that you're about to receive a bad report from someone on the medical staff. I responded to the call from the hospital only to be stopped by hospital security. I don't know if they thought I was coming to act a fool, and I say this in the book. Granted, this is a true story, but when I got to the hospital, the security was there, and I'm thinking, I didn't come to do anything. I came because I got a phone call. Um, I responded to the call by the hospital only to be stopped by security. When I approached my child's room, I could hear those audible whimpering sounds coming from her. They almost sounded inhuman, as if she were fighting between this world and the next one, so to hold on. I collected my thoughts and pulled myself together. Just hours ago, I had spoken with the nurse, and she informed me all was well. My child was resting peacefully, and she relayed that if there were any changes, the hospital staff would call. I continued to plan my mid morning schedule at work. I made sure the nurse had my work and cell numbers. In fact, I was thinking about my own doctor's appointment later that afternoon. I'm on page 25, Granny. It's a true story. Now, standing outside the intensive care room were doctors, nurses, technicians, and hospital nursing supervisors are looking on my child as they administer CPR. My mind drifted and I'm reflecting on everything up to this point. I told someone, I was told someone would talk to me shortly. When someone does arrive, I'm informed that my child's heart had stopped, and for now, they needed me to wait in the closed like room down the hall. They assured me someone would come and speak to me momentarily. Taking a break, I have to mention a couple of persons' names. Besides my immediate family, my other kids, my sisters, I had one brother here at the time, I believe. I have to call their names. I have two friends. Miss Elizabeth Anderson made the phone call to me. I had called her and asked her if she could go up to the hospital because I was at work. Remember, prior to this, I had missed 10 days of work. And Miss Anderson is a good friend of mine, and Angie Hill. And why am I saying this, Granny? The Bible says to us, faithful are the wounds of a friend. And I have friends that not only showed up, but had Miss Anderson not been in that room, my daughter was getting ready to fall. The nurse had just came in, and Liz, I'm calling her Liz, or Miss Betty, was in the room with her, and she happened to notice Chelsea, and I'm calling her name, sliding off the bed, and she grabbed her, and she screamed for the nurse. So I am eternally grateful for Miss Anderson. When my husband and I purchased Chelsea a car, and I have to say this, Miss Anderson took it upon herself. I'm a good driver, but I'm a sleepy driver. But she took it upon herself. I called her, and I asked her if she would go to Memphis with me, and she said sure. We drove that Betty Crocker looking station wagon. Well, she drove. I slept a little bit, and I told her I can do this, and she must have known that I wasn't cut out, but she drove all the way to Memphis with me. Then we caught the bus and came back after Rara, my uh, sound manager, ran us out of Memphis when she was 2 years old. Okay, still on page 25. The hospital security person directed me to the waiting room down the hall. He was called just in case I decided to cut up and act a fool. How am I act a fool? And you're saying you got to administer CPR to my child. Other family members began arriving. The hospital chaplain was there, and ministers from my own church. Pastor Bicey came. That was my minister for 42 years. I made small talk with family members, and for a few moments, I had them laughing about something that occurred a few days earlier, Granny. They couldn't possibly know that my own heart was about to burst. I appeared to have it all together, for you see, it was my knee baby who was in trouble again. And you were with me last week. You read about my knee baby. My mind returned to her three children. Just 8 days ago, I had arrived back to Lansing with the U-Haul truck. We talked about that. Back with all their belongings, shifting and rearranging my household to accommodate her belongings. What would I tell them this time? They knew the routine. Each time their mother went to the hospital, Granny had been there. Whether it was 3 days or 3 weeks, Granny found her way there. Their mother had survived a stroke and a gallbladder removal just a month ago while in Memphis. Now, less than 8 days later, and in a different state, she was back in the hospital fighting once more in a battle for her life. I'm turning the page on page 26. It had been almost an hour, and finally, someone from the nursing administrative staff came to talk to my family and me. She was pleasant and her voice was calm, but I am a mom, and I could tell and I could see the trouble on her face. I knew the look and I felt the pain as she prepared to share with me what had taken place in the last few hours. I approached her as a mom and asked her for the truth. Her response was not good as she was describing to me and all those in the waiting room what had just happened. Once again, my child's heart had stopped, and now my family and I were faced with the realities of what might occur within the next few hours. All eyes were on me and my and the support of my husband, my other children, friends, and family surrounded me. News travels fast, sometimes faster than the time needed to process what actions are warranted in circumstances such as these. Now, my own mind was racing with thoughts from conversations with my child I had just had before Dawn and her arrival at the hospital. Did I say I loved her, or did I remind her of how tired I was of changing and rearranging my life for her and my grandkids, taking a break? Sometimes we don't always tell the truth, Granny, when we're helping others. Sometimes the frustration, the disappointment, we carry it and we just smile. And I thought about that. Did I tell her that I had had enough? Did I tell her that I loved her? Did I tell her it was foolish for you to get out of the hospital in Memphis and drive all the way here by yourself, and you just had a stroke and gallbladder surgery? I didn't say that, but I was thinking it, Granny. I'm being honest with you. I was thinking, enough is enough. Okay, all eyes are on me. Okay, I had spent bill money that I needed to help her, bought automobiles for her. I told you about the Betty Crocker looking automobile. Me and Miss Liz, well, Miss Liz drove to Memphis, purchased stoves for her that were then left in newly rented houses. Uh, why would you need a stove there? You could have told me and I would have come and got it. But she did, a good stove. Once she decided she needed to relocate to a different state, wired money in the middle of the night, you name it, I had done it. I had sent packages through the mail for birthdays and Christmas and had brought clothes for grandchildren over and over again. I had just gotten back home and got my house in order for the last time. My daughter decided to come home for a visit that lasted 2 years. She came home once and she just, Mom, I just want to visit. And I should have known when that dilapidated car pulled up in the back of our house. It wasn't going to be short. She stayed 2 years before she relocated to Memphis. Finally, I could enjoy having a spare room in our home just for myself with all the things in it I never had as a child. And this is true. I had my own bedroom, even though I have a husband and I slept in a room with him. Granted, I had my own room. I had it filled with stuffed animals lined across the bed, my own TV, CD player, and a floral arrangement of some of the finest flowers you ever saw. Now, once again, sacrifices would have to be made. My grandchildren would have to be enrolled in school, and daycare facilities and transportation would have to be arranged around my work schedule. I couldn't and didn't dare share those thoughts with anyone in the room. How cruel and selfish they would think I was being. Yet, as I sat in that claustrophobic room boxed with all those people, I knew I needed to show them my strength. And where did my strength come from, Dennis? It came from God. I didn't realize it at the time because I was thinking about me. I made it about me. I'm going to tell you the truth. As I lift my hands, I made it about me. And we do that, Granny. Sometimes we feel like it's my time. But I pulled myself I pulled myself together. I wanted to scream from the depth inside of my belly that I had had enough. Why didn't she listen to me 8 years ago when I warned her about the premature marriage she was about to enter into. She was just a baby, but no, it had to be her way, and now here I sit in the cramped room dealing with emotions I dare not share. After the nurse left, it seemed like 2 hours passed before the doctor came in the room. We all watched his facial expressions, and we knew the news was even more devastating, Grannies. Yet again, the news was heartbreaking. My child's heart had stopped 2 more times, and they were preparing me for the worst. The doctor suggested that we call in any relatives and support we needed. They were going to clean up the mess in the room where she was, and my husband and I were allowed to see her. I thanked the doctors and proceeded to have my other children make phone calls to family members. All eyes, Granny. Listen to me. Just like all eyes are on you, all eyes are on me. I got up from that seat and excused myself. I'm taking a break. I got up and I said, "Guys, will you excuse me?" Because I couldn't go into the room until they came and got me. There was always a small bathroom located next to those rooms they put you in. I needed to have a conversation all by myself where no one was watching and listening to what I was about to say. I proceeded to the bathroom, opened the door, and looked into the mirror. Granny, I looked directly into the mirror that was in front of me. Once I closed the door, I looked straight in that mirror, and for the first time since my initial phone call to come and check on my daughter, I could see my face here. I could see my face. I'm in the camera, but I could see my face in that mirror. No makeup on, nothing to hide behind. It was just me looking directly in the mirror. I lifted my old hands, and I would not lie to you. Excuse me. I lifted my whole old hands up as I had done in Memphis just a few days earlier. My request was a simple one. I didn't ask God and I didn't beg God for me. I only requested that He would let my daughter know that I was there. I was there in the room with her. And if she wanted to fight, Granny, to stay alive, then that would become my fight as well. I never cried one tear. As God is my witness, I didn't cry. I looked in that mirror, Granny, and I had a conversation. I only asked that she be aware that I was present. I washed my face with that coarse white towel paper. You know what they put in the bathrooms, and found my way back to the waiting room. The medical staff had come to take me and my husband down that long, cold corridor to the room where my daughter's life was suspended in time. They had put her on the ventilator. Excuse me, guys. And all you heard was that noise. Squish, squish, squish. And I'm thinking, how dare them? But she needed the ventilator because she had stopped breathing. Her heart had stopped. Um, I saw monitors, cords, machines, and a frail 98-pound person lying so still, connected to a breathing machine and a heart monitor. I could actually hear my own heart, Grannies, pounding in my chest. I could taste the medicine that they had used on her. I could feel the cold sting of death lurking in the room, and I could see the results of the constant pounding on my daughter's chest after CPR was administered. Do you know, take a break there, sometimes, Granny, they can break your ribs when they're administering the compressions? And we saw this. Me and my husband saw this. So I stood on the left side of the bed. My husband stood on the right. We're on page 29. I bent down to her ear and repeated those same words I had echoed in the bathroom a few minutes ago. I said her name. I got right in her ear. I said her name softly in her ear and whispered to her, and this is the truth: if you want to stay here, I'll fight for you. Brings tears to my eyes. That's all I said. If you want to stay here, and I'm calling her name, Chelsea, I'll fight for you. Grannies, we've been fighting for our kids all their lives. Mothers, grandfathers, brothers, sister. But I said it in her ear. If you want to stay here, and I know she could hear me, even though she was suspended somewhere else, I'll fight for you. That's all I said. Naturally, she was not able to respond, but her mother knows, and for the next 5 days, my child laid unaware of her surroundings, deep in a sleep that only God could bring her out of. 5 days later, and many opportunities to lift my old hands up to Him in praise, my daughter woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Chelsea, I never want you to forget that. 4 a.m. She pulled that tube. She did. They did. She pulled that tube to that ventilator out of her throat. People came flying for everywhere. Now listen at this. 5 days later, and many opportunities to lift my own hands up to Him in praise, my daughter woke up. For the next, hear me good, 49 days. Three different pacemakers, defibrillators, combinations were installed and tried in my daughter. She had a reaction. So the first one they had to take out. The second one wasn't reading right. They had to take it out. And they finally got a third one. We walked the quarters of the hospital praising God once again with uplifted hands for another miracle. During those most critical days, Granny, I found out that you do have a choice to either give in or be honest with yourself. You have the ability to position yourselves to stay in the fight. I realize that some fights may not have a happy ending, Granny, and at and a happy ending, as this one did for my family. But I learned without a shadow of a doubt that God will sustain you, Granny. I'm gonna say it again. I learned, Celestine Starks, that God will sustain you when the battle appears too much for you. He will step in and remind you of how those waiting room experiences can change your life. And this one did change her life. She missed Christmas. She missed her kid's birthday because this was December of 1998, the same year I went to Memphis. She stayed in that hospital all the way up and through March of the next year. He will even take pleasure in Granny's old hands in praising to worship him for allowing her to pour her heart out in honesty about her fears, her struggles, and sometimes the overwhelming burdens we have to bear. God never leaves us, Granny. He just picks us up and carry us so that our hands are free to raise them to Him. He literally picked me up so I could lift my hands. And you may say again, what does that have to do again with coming out of the closet? I went into that bathroom, and at that particular time, that was my closet. And I had a conversation looking at me in the mirror, and I thought, I'm going to just say this one thing to you. And when I come out of this closet, it's between me and you, God, and her. Granny's coming out of the closet. I still had to raise my hands. Everybody was sitting around waiting on me in the waiting room to see what I was going to do. And I thought, I'm not going to act a fool because I just came out of the bathroom speaking to myself and to God. So why would I act a fool? Security guard was there. The chaplain was there. We're turning the page, Granny. We're on page 30. Wow. I hope and pray. Make sure I got the right. Yeah, yeah. I hope and pray your waiting room experiences will draw you closer, grannies, to God, as all eyes will be upon you as grannies, mothers, sisters, fathers, brothers, aunts, and uncles in your time of difficulties. I hope you find strength to come out of your closet after having spoken to God about your experiences. You will see how God's love can sustain you. Lift up your old hands, knowing all things are possible for those who believe. My daughter has been out of the hospital for almost a full year. Now listen at this. Grannies, I want you to hear me because you'll say, well, how could a loving God let this happen? Listen, the last time she was admitted, I was admitted also. I had exhausted my physical body. Take a moment. The ripping and running down the highways, bringing the grandkids back, getting them enrolled in school, making sure they had lunches. I had exhausted my body. I spent 5 days down the hall from her. We're in the same hospital. Did you hear what I just said? I couldn't do anything for her, let alone myself. I had come out of another closet only to realize I was not Supermom. If God is picking you up, Granny, and carrying you, let him do it. But I took me out of his hands. I thought, I can do this. My body broke down. Hear me good, Granny. We try to do everything for everybody, anywhere, anytime. We'll even borrow from ourselves. What do you mean by that? I'm not talking about money. We'll borrow our strength and give it to somebody else. And then, like good old Celeste, I ended up in the hospital. I realized I was not Supermom. I was just another mother and granny who had pushed too far and too long. We're grateful for that first time since this journey. My daughter has not missed her children's birthday or spending time with them for the holidays. She still fights to stay alive, and every now and then I whisper in her ear, I will fight to keep her here if that's what she desires. But she must also lift her hands to praise and worship God for his goodness in her life. Grannies, I wouldn't trade my old hands for anything this world could offer. I hope by now, after journeying in this journey with me, you will appreciate your old hands. Come out, come out. You'll be surprised at all the doors you can shut and the people you will bless by sharing your journey. Come out of the closet. Wow, Granny, we made it to the end and we did go over a little bit, but I apologize. Come out of your closet. True story, Grannies. You know I wouldn't lie. uh, like I said last week, everybody got a new baby, a need baby. And when you're in the waiting room of life, I can say truthfully, if you go to God, he'll come in. I'm not going to prolong the time because I went over a little longer, but I wanted to get that chapter read. This has been an awesome journey. My, what do I want to call this? Uh, my time spent with you has changed my life. I'm learning new things about myself. I'm learning that I still have some things that I have to deal with. But, Granny, this is the last Monday in November. You will get a message on my YouTube channel from either my manager or my production team that we're going to take a break. We will not be back at all in December. We'll come back the second Monday in 2022. I couldn't believe it. And you'll say, well, why are you taking a break, uh, winter break from reading? Granny has a paper that she has to finish. She was given a deadline by the school that she's attending. So since we're going into Christmas break and the kids will be out of school, I need this time to fulfill a commitment that I made. And I'm God's child. And when you make a commitment, you have to honor that. So again, persons that are helping me, my sound person, uh, the makeup person, we'll put a posting on Facebook and on my YouTube channel to let you know that this will be our last reading until January 2022. I can't believe I'm saying that. Um, Please have a blessed holiday. Love your family, grannies. If you're in a waiting room during the Christmas season, find a closet or a bathroom that you can go in and tell God about it. And when He picks you up to carry you, Granny, don't jump out of His arms. Let Him carry you because He's big enough to do it. I learned this from a plaque that I had in one of our bedrooms. Why would you stay up all night worrying when Jesus never sleeps? With that said, this is Granny's Old Hand Celestine Starks. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and it's another one. But anyway, looking forward to seeing you in the new year. You can still go on the YouTube channel, and if you miss some, they're still running them. We would appreciate that. We'd appreciate you reaching out. Granny, I lift my hands. Reaching out during this holiday season that we're entering to watch out for one another. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Angie Hill and Elizabeth Anderson were there, and I won't mention what Miss Hill did, but my family was there too. My sisters, my kids, my husband. But when you have friends that show up in the thick of things. You don't forget them. Again, the Bible says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. And so I thank God for my friends. Thank God for this season. And go green, go white. This is Granny saying, have a blessed rest of this year. Enjoy your family. Bye. Lift your hands, Granny. Lift your hands. Thank you.